Hey, welcome back to another Elevation Association Experience podcast. We are joining you, of course, is us. We're your hosts, Dr. Jared Hill, Dr. Dan Nelson. It's great to have you guys back listening. Today is a cool episode because we are going to tell a story, not one about a man named Jed, who was a poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed. I could sing that. I can sing Gilligan's Island. There's definitely some people listening to this have no idea what I'm talking about. They just think I'm ranting off on some crazy poem. Um, Look it up, kids.
Hmm.
I'm excited today though to get into this story that's long overdue. I'm sitting on a booby trap chair, so I have a little bit of intrepidation right now as I'm talking because the chair could fall out from under me. But if I suddenly disappear, feel free to laugh and also be a little concerned. But the story is how the Elevation Association Operating System (EAOS) came to be, and why we built it, what it is, and it's interesting because we didn't really set out to build EAOS. We didn't set out to build an operating system for dentists. We were really just trying to solve a problem, and we wanted to better understand the problem is this. Why do so many great clinicians build practices that feel chaotic, right? And we, just like, um, I say we just in the same sense that we're going to do another bodybuilding show this year. Jared, you have a show coming up. We're going to do it though. And so when I say we found EOS, that's how I frame we, because Jared found EOS. And then we implemented it. Jared was like, we've got to do this thing. I'm going to let him kind of get into that a little bit and tell his side of that story. But we were able to implement it. But we realized something was missing in the implementation of EOS. And that gap between EOS and what we needed and what was specifically necessary for dentistry is why EAOS exists today.
Yeah, I'm surprised, Dan, we haven't had a podcast on this yet. It seems like a huge oversight on our part, right? Like
No.
we've kind of dived into the segments of EAOS and what we do, but this is the story of how it started and why why it's unique and what it is. So I'm excited to dive into this. There's um as we work with other practices and talk with other clinicians throughout the country, there's some patterns that that we observe within dentists. We observed it within ourselves. Often you'll hear the term stuck in a hamster wheel. Like dentists feel like they're in this clinical hamster wheel, just kind of showing them doing everything over and over again. Right. Every time we talk to dentists, we're like, "Hey, what are the goals?" And they're like, "Well, here's my production goal." And it's like, "Okay, that's awesome." But there's got to be more than just your production goal, right? You have to have something you're looking forward to, something that you're growing, something besides that. And we found this because there's lack of vision. Uh,
Mhm.
there's a lot of discord within the team. A lot of dentists complain about their team members, right? There's
Right.
no, yeah, and it's always them, right? It's never us. It's always them. um, and as we dive into it with other practices and start to dissect it, you realize there's a lot of like overlapping of roles. There's no really accountability. It's like, oh, hey, so and so is going to do it.
I was watching a podcast with Kevin O'Leary yesterday, and he was talking about how kind of this idea of you were talking about stuck in the hamster wheel, no vision, there's confusion, and the way he described it, what he was describing all of that stuff, and he was saying that it is the opposite of an entrepreneur mindset. And he said, and when people get stuck in that mindset, it leads to a life of mediocrity. And so what you're talking about, so I was telling my wife about it last night at dinner, and we were just, I was saying, man, it's so easy to get stuck in a life of mediocrity because you just are in the hamster wheel, just doing your thing. You're not really going, you're working, and you're doing this stuff. But yeah, these were huge problems. And then you have, you stack on top of that, you have the problem with with the lack of interpretation of data. So, I mean, we're guilty of that, right? Like, I mean, this is one of the things that spurred us along was the fact that you had the vision to know that I mean, number 77 on the list of how many clients, Dental Intel has thousands of clients now. Jared, before I got here, was number 77. Saw the vision, saw the value in it. Both of us would look at it and we're like, "This is a lot of this is just endless numbers, right?" And it was hard to interpret all of that. And then you see once you're in that hamster wheel, especially in dentistry, it's dangerous. Mediocrity is so dangerous in dentistry because it's getting harder, but it's still somewhat compared to other professions. It's easy to be successful, and by successful, I mean traditional, markers of success, meaning typically financially, you can do pretty well. And you've said it before, Jared, you can have success without direction, and it's going to lead to burnout. We kept seeing this, it's a big part of your background story about how, that type of success does lead to burnout. And so these were patterns that were pretty obvious to us that were happening, right?
Yeah,
Um,
in every practice. I mean, as far as
yeah.
you often have to dive deep under the layer because everybody wants to portray success, right? You have this outer shell of I'm busy, I'm successful, I'm earning money, I'm doing great. And it's to a certain degree it's a facade that but you want to keep it up because for several reasons, either because you invested so much into your education and time, and you have so much debt or whatever it is, but you have all these factors, and like I said, and the most dangerous thing in dentistry is success without vision, right? Without direction. Like if you don't you know where you're going, because at some point in time you're gonna get burned out, and maybe you're not feeling it now. Maybe you're 4 or 5 years into it and it's still just kinda going, going, going. Maybe you're 7 or 8 years into it. And sometime you're gonna be like, "This is the worst. I'm ready to do whatever to get out of this." I just saw, a podcast title of a guy who his whole thing is how to exit medicine as quickly as possible, meaning,
Oh, wow.
that's this whole podcast is based on exiting medicine, exiting the model. And I think um, that's a pathway that a lot of dentists get to without realizing. So, going back to what this is, these dentists are climbing. Now you have success. We like to use the mountain as a as a reference, right? As our we do this talk about
It's our metaphor.
these peaks. Yeah, this metaphor all the time. Right? You're climbing without a map, and often you're climb, 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 and we're very good climbers as dentists. We're very successful, but the next thing we know, we're on this mountain over here, and we should be on this mountain over here, and we're like, "Crap, where did I go wrong 10 years ago?" And so we then try to um we then try to back up and kind of reverse all that stuff. So yeah, that's why we created EOS. Maybe it's good to go into like let me just go into the history of it, right? So
Yeah, I think that getting into a background and understanding what EOS is vital, right? Like, you need to lay the groundwork of how EAOS even started.
yeah, so we were feeling these 5 things in our office. We were feeling the confusion. We were blaming the team for a lot of stuff. We had data, we didn't know how to use it. We were in this, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And then we were at a conference, and somebody introduced the concept of a couple of books. One of them was the book Traction by Gino Wickman. And so we got it as a team, as an EA team, and I picked it up and started to read it. And as I started to read this book, Traction, the very beginning, it says this is a system for any small business between 5 and 500 employees. And I'm like, well, that's me. We had, I don't know, 10, 12 employees at the time. Um, I wonder what this is talking about. And as I got into it and as I started to read it more, I was shocked. I was like, "Oh, this is crazy how applicable these basic business principles are to solving some of these problems that we need." And so I talked with my brother-in-law who has an MBA, And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that's a great book." He goes, "My wife," meaning my sister-in-law, "actually runs this traction in her business." And I said, "Are you kidding me? Let's do this." So I sat down with her. I said, "Tell me all about it. How do you run it? How does it work?" And she's like, "It's incredible." So EOS it stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. Okay, that's the Gino Wickman traction coined terminology that they use, and it has certain components. It has your vision. It talks about people, how to deal with people. It talks about data, how to use and interpret data. It talks about how to solve issues. It talks about your processes, how to put those together, and then talks about getting track, putting all that together and getting traction and moving forward, right? And so um, it's incredible because it's simple, right? And that's what we need it's not overcomplicated. It's not someone coming in and doing maybe one thing or here. It lays it all out at the beginning. It says, okay, this is what it is. And guess what? This is how it's worked in this business. This is how it's worked in this business. This is how it's worked in tens of thousands of businesses, different variety of businesses throughout the US and really throughout the world. And so I thought, man, let's do it, right? Let's try it. Let's start to implement some of this stuff. Um, and so we did. When did we do this? We 2019, I think we 20, I don't remember,
Yeah,
2018,
something like
2019.
that.
We started to implement some like we sat down and we went through the entire thing. You and me and Ryan, we were on this long road trip. We kind of worked through everything, every sort of process. It's kind of like a cookbook. You know, traction is this is what you do next, and this is what you do next. It's awesome. It's a very step by step system of a way to put together your business and run your business and solve all of these business frustrations, which was awesome. But the problem is, it wasn't built specifically for dentists, right? And I think that is the issue. Is there's certain points within a dental practice that don't go well with any general business. Meaning, we always have this, you know, this production as our producer versus the leader. This production versus leader, this tension between the two. Am I the CEO? Am I the producer? Am I, you know, what is my role? How much time do I split with that? And not only that, but we have like we've got two different business models within our practice. We have our production model and we have the hygiene model. Both of them need to be run like businesses within a business, right? So that was a little bit different. The whole insurance, oh man, the PPOs, the write-offs, the adjustments, that whole thing needed to be figured out within traction. It wasn't addressed, and really, it was vague at best as far as the finances part of it. Um, and then the other part, I think, was your identity as a clinic, right? I mean, there's a lots of different ways to identify yourself as a clinic, and we really needed to kind of custom. So what we needed to customize EOS for a dental practice. We need to take the principles, the generic principles, which are not, I mean, those are basic business principles. Gino has just put them in an order and then put some terminology to them. But take those principles, apply them to dentistry, to dental practices, and then figure out how it works. And we did that for a couple of years. We had to work through so many things. We had to refine and review and try stuff and work stuff out and change stuff and build stuff and scratch stuff and start all over again and all those things. But that's essentially how we came up with our version of traction, which we call EAOS, which is Elevation Association Operating Systems. With our operating system based upon these principles that works really, really well in a dental practice.
Yeah, and there's a handful of jobs out there, careers out there that are where the owner is tied to the actual production. You know, contractors are a good example. Obviously, physicians, you know, a lot of positions within the medical field. And you know, the principles, there's some uniqueness. Like, I love that you touched on some of the uniqueness of like just the complexity, like you're saying, of ownership. Contractors don't have to deal with insurance. Contractors don't have to deal with hygiene. You know, they don't have something that's comparable. There's stuff in there that is so unique. And you know, the core idea behind the core idea behind EAOS is EOS, obviously. So, just to say that plainly and bluntly, it's just translated, we've taken it and just applied it to the principles of dentistry. And, I think that we should go over a few of the reasons that we built it, and how we went around building it. You have, in addition to the things we were just talking about within dentistry, and how it's a atypical business, we have provider bottlenecks, right? Um, which is not completely, you're not completely alone in that. But we have emotional patients. Listen, I used to be a contractor. You know what I never had to deal with when I was digging a ditch or planting a tree was the tree never cried and never like didn't open big enough or whatever. Like there was certain things that I just never had to deal with as a contractor that I deal with daily, now. And like I said, it's not like at the end of the day I had to submit a claim for an insurance to get paid. Everything was fee for service in the contractor world. It was just completely different. And then we have a very small but high impact teams. So context matters here. It does matter. We are so unique in the space that we are able to be entrepreneurs in. There's nothing that's completely comparable, which is cool too. It's very cool that we're unique.
Yeah, I mean, and the other reason, one of the other reasons, is why we built EAOS specifically is because there's a huge data section in EOS. It talks about the importance of data. And I agree with that. We agree with that 100%, right? Like data driven decisions are so important to make within your practice. The problem is we had the data. You and I had the data. We had dental intel. We had a dashboard. We had KPIs. We had the what we didn't know is we didn't have the interpretation of that data and then the implementation of that interpretation of the data. So we didn't know, we didn't understand um, all of that entails. We thought we did, and this is the thing. We'll talk to other dentists who are like, yeah, I use dental intel, and when you talk to them, they don't really use it, right? I mean, they have it, and they'll look at
They
one.
have it.
Yeah, and part of that is, "Oh, yeah, I've got it, and I use it," right? So I'll look at the collections board and see that we're not collecting, and then I go talking and to my front office, say, "Oh, we're not collecting," right? That's how they use it, right? You have to actually understand the data. You have to interpret it. What is it telling you about your hygienist, your assistants, your front office coordinator? What is it telling you about your system that you are doing well or need to change or fix, right? And then once you interpret that data, you have to then implement the changes. And that's what EAOS does really well is teach you a system for how to interpret the data and then implement those changes from that interpretation of the data, which is missing in just in general EOS.
Well, crap, we could have built Elevation Association off of that component alone. When Ryan came on board and we realized that that was such a massive component that was missing was the data interpretation, and he filled this enormous gap. That is a massive, we can't understate this enough. That is a huge, huge, huge gap in your practice. Because and like I like that you said that because we thought we were like, yeah, of course, yeah, we use data, sure, yeah, and it's like we tracked what like four metrics, whatever the Burkhart rep brought us, and we're like, oh yeah, either we're terrible at it or we're doing great. Really, we weren't tracking much, and that was the crappy thing about it is that we were locked in this, again, mediocrity because of ignorance. We didn't know, and we thought we were doing so good. We could have built EA just on data interpretation, going into offices and showing and breaking down the different KPIs, the key point indicators, and then showing them like, this is how it's impacting your daily life. This is how it's impacting you in the quarter. This is how it's impacting you in the year. This is what it's happening. This is where it's coming from. You have an underperformer here. You have an insurance bottleneck problem here. You've got it leads to answers to problems you don't even know you have, and it's like, oh my gosh. So data it's so profound. And I think that, we really need to pound this home that if you don't have a fairly sophisticated system for data interpretation. And I'm not talking about like dental intel or practice by number. I'm not talking about the software. I'm talking about a system within your practice, like that's built in within your practice, not a software. The software can just give you the numbers, but the interpretation of the data is where you need that sophisticated system to be able to go, oh, that's what that means. That's the implication. That's the impact of what all of this means. And this is what this is giving me feedback for, and how I can now utilize this to make meaningful changes. Data driven decision making. When you said that earlier, I think that's important to bring that up again and say that's what data driven decision making is based on, is good data interpretation, not just some numbers that are usually a little bit obscure on the surface, right? So yeah, that I think that's majorly important. And I think that you know, I have to tell a little bit of background story here about EA in general. When I moved here from Japan, and we were sitting in this giant office space that Jared had, and Jared had built a beautiful office that I was lucky just to walk into, and so we're sitting here in this big space. It's actually where I'm sitting right now, and he's like, "I've had this idea. I always thought it'd be cool to get some small groups of docs together where we can collaborate, and we live in a destination area, so come and do some like fun stuff because people want to come here to go mountain biking or skiing or whatever." And he's like, he's like, there's a space missing, for that, where we just docs that are super isolated, and it'd be cool to like take them out of isolation. And as we got talking about this, in our own collaboration, we started to realize that there was not a lot out there feeding the life component. And that's where this whole idea of your practice should be serving your life. You shouldn't be serving your practice comes from, right? And we knew that there was a component of feeding the life of a dentist, not just not the clinician, but the person, and feeding their life outside of the office, outside of dental work was important. And there's nothing in EOS about that. It's strictly a business operating system. And so we knew we needed to build something into EOS that was going to fill that void. We didn't just want better practices. We want better lives for our members and for ourselves too. I mean, that's where it started. It was for you and I, right? So I think I still maintain that that's one of the biggest boons for us was recognizing that, hey, we can build something way beyond just a good business operating system. We can actually build something that is transformational, not transactional.
Yeah, if you implement EOS, if you just read the book and you implement those principles, your business is going to grow. It's an accountability system, a business system. There's no question that it works. It's proven, right? The problem is it's gonna if you don't understand it or control it, it will control your life. You will end up building a such a powerful operating system within a business that now your business is running your life instead of letting your business serve your life. And that's what you're talking about, Dan. Is like there's got to be this harmony, right? Otherwise, again, you're gonna have crazy success and you're gonna burn out and you're gonna hate yourself, and it's gonna take a toll on your family, on your life and your health, whatever it is, and that's not good either. Like so, EAOS has three components to it, right? EOS is one. EOS is your business operating system. EAOS has three components, and we like to compare those to peaks. Like so, we use these metaphors of peaks because visually it's easier to see, right? So the first peak that we talk about is actually life. Right. And like I said, like we wanted to get the dentist group together to talk about life. How are you doing? What are you working on? How's your personal whatever it is. How are you doing in life? Right. Because your practice should serve your life. So we created a life plan, right? A peak. We named the Everest peak, Mount
Yeah,
Everest.
it's the hardest one to get to the top to, for
Yeah, right.
sure.
People die going up there. Oh wait, I probably should, that's probably
It's
part
true.
of it. But it is the hardest one to summit, right? So, but we have this imagery of climbing Everest in order to develop your life plan, and we have tools within that life plan to help you design and plan your life. That's part of the operating, that's part of our operating system. We have a life map, you have your ideal weeks, you get your personal vision of what you're hoping to accomplish. And that it's important to set aside time to design that, because that way when you then jump into your operating system and designing your practice, they don't clash, right? They don't collide. They don't, this is not this constant tension between the two. It's like, okay, this is the life I want to live. Now this is a practice that I need to serve this life in order to accomplish this, not the other way around, or not this constant battle, because that leads to burnout too. So it's important to define both. So we start with life.
Yeah, and that came again going back to, what we were just talking about. The recognition that that was a something missing from any other business out there, I think is one of the biggest, most impactful thing to have on me personally. And I think that that's what it's saying is that while we set this out to go and like help out other docs, the reason that we do that is because I can come from a place where I was like, yeah, this was really transformational for me. Now I have this incredible a group of, I'm not crying. I'm honestly just looks like I'm crying. I could be crying. I have cried before over less things. Um, but it was so transformational because we have such an awesome group of incredible um entrepreneurial minded docs that add so much to my life and bring so much to the table. The community that we've been able to build through this is massive. So again, I just stamping that hard because it's so important. And we also built this, really EOS, where it was probably the most, if you're familiar with the EOS, you've run it, you understand it, where you're going to find that is it within our Fuji peak, right? So our Fuji, is our leadership component. It's the leadership summit that we've created. And so out of the three peaks, we picked three peaks. We picked Everest, Fuji, and Kilimanjaro based on height. Also, I lived in Japan, so I really wanted Fuji anyway. But but this one is hikeable. I've actually hiked Mount Fuji, like the literal Mount. I've done both. I've done the theoretical one or the hypothetical, or whatever it's called, and I've done the real Mount Fuji. It's very hikeable. And this is where you're going to see EOS, the components of EOS or the principles in EOS at play the most. This is how, we teach somebody how to run your practice like a business. It's time to put on the CEO hat and run your business as a business, right? So, and we've adapted a lot of EOS tools in there. So if you come in and you're looking at, the Fuji Peak, you're going to see a lot of familiar things if you've read Traction, like your accountability chart, right? Your scorecards, your meetings, your weekly, these meaningful, I believe we don't call them this, but Gino Wickman calls them a level 10 meeting. You're going to see these meetings that we hate meetings for meeting's sake. They need to be meaningful meetings. So anyway, all the components you would find, not all of them, but a lot of the components and principles you would find within EOS, you're going to find in that leadership component or Fuji summit.
Yeah. And this is also where we help you have that identity shift from dentist to CEO of your practice, right? So, and I think that's what EOS is all about. And EOS is all about, becoming the leader that your practice deserves or your business deserves. And I guess EAOS is becoming the leader that your practice deserves. And so finding that balance between how much clinical work I want to do or be a part of and contribute to that versus how much time and effort I need to put into leadership and what that means for the team and for the business in general. So this is a very it's actually a very fun component of what we do because it's super impactful immediately. I mean, we've got tools and systems that this is a fun part to see a light bulb go off in a lot of people. So that's a second peak, and our third peak and our last peak, which nobody talks about. There's nobody in our industry that focuses on this third peak, and that's legacy, right? What you leave behind you. It's this is our Kilimanjaro peak. I listened to
Why Kilimanjaro though? So you make sure you talk about that.
no, it's interesting. Is we we picked Kilimanjaro because it was kind of the middle because of the height, and then all of a sudden now we have this. It was like we were manifesting without knowing it because now we have this
Right.
humanitarian project behind me, our Dental Legacy Foundation, which happens in Tanzania, which is where part of Kilimanjaro is, Tanzania and Kenya. So
Come on,
it's
that's buck wild, right? I think that's crazy that we
it
picked
is
like
crazy.
randomly, like, oh, Kilimanjaro, and then we're like flying in. I'm like, nah, that is crazy that we ended up in Tanzania.
It is crazy. Yeah, and so when we have you come to our legacy, which is the Dental Legacy Foundation, and have you see what we do and help you, you have the opportunity to serve and give back and to really really get a feel for what we've designed as our legacy. Now, this is not your legacy. It doesn't have to be. You can be part of it, and if you want to join us out, and make this your legacy, that's absolutely great. But if you want to do something else, by all means, you this is just to help you understand the process of how you can design your legacy, and it can be in whatever part of your life that you want to, right? So it's just it gives us an opportunity to, at the end of the day, we talk about the impact that we have, the impact on them and on us, what that means long term. I brought my kids on this, um, and it is a very powerful experience for everybody that comes to it.
I want to hear your line of thought. I cut you off. You said you were listening to a podcast. I'm curious where you're
Oh,
going.
no, I was gonna say I listened to so as Ann said, I listened to Ronnie Coleman's new music album,
Oh,
okay? Ronnie Coleman was a bodybuilder, and he was awesome. And he's got a new album out. Yes, it's an album. It's a rap album, and but it's so cool. Like it's one that I can honestly recommend to people because there's like zero swear words, and it like tells a story. It's pretty cool. But he talks about legacy. He's like legacy isn't what you leave on the shelf. It's in the legacy isn't the trophies you leave on the shelf. It's what you leave in the people that are around you. And it's a very cool. Like he's the most decorated um, Mr. Olympia in the world. Eight championships that he has, and he has that could define him as far as his legacy. But he's like, this it's not about the trophies, and for us as dentists, we have trophies, right? We have a practice, we've got a house, we have maybe a car, we have our own trophies, but your legacy isn't about that. It's what you leave in other people. And so that's one thing that we focus on as well. That you get a consultant, you get somebody to come in, they're just going to help you build your business and grow, grow, grow. You can 10x whatever the buzzwords are now. It's way more than that, right? And that's why EAOS is an adaptation of EOS, and a very powerful adaptation that encompasses more than just your business.
dude, I freaking love that's gonna be a sick soundbite. The dentists have trophies. That's so profound. Like we have our trophies. It's our car. It's our house. We definitely have trophies, man. Like and what's the, it's funny because if for any of those of this have earned trophies over like real trophies, the crappy things you get after whatever, they just collect dust over time, but the legacy prevails, and the legacy, will, that's hopefully something that stands the test of time, something that you build that is much better than just a trophy. I freaking love that. I'm using that from now on, Jared. I'm stealing it, man. I'm running. We came up with it. We
We did.
we we said that. Yeah.
We
Mhm.
just did. It's perfect.
Yes, we did. Just like we found traction.
Yep.
Um, Well, I think we should talk a little bit about, we've touched on some points of how EAOS is different, but I really want to get into the meat and potatoes of like, okay, where are we separate? Why is it different? Why can't you just take traction and just go and implement that? Why would you need to come and be like, okay, guys, how do I implement EAOS? Why is this more important than just EOS? And there's at least a few differentiators I can think of off the top of my head. And the first one is that there's dental specific scorecards. We were just talking about this. The data within any business, I don't care what it is, the data sets are going to be very, very unique and specific to whatever that business is. Right. And so you should have dental specific scorecards, not just generic KPIs. You need real practice metrics. And I'm not going to beat this horse too much because we've already talked about it a bit, but just, I mean, that's to me right off the bat, that was one of the things that was stood out was like, okay, you have to have dental specific scorecard that you go through on a weekly basis and make sure that you're tracking the right dental specific KPIs. So in my mind, that was the first big differentiator is like utilize dental specific data to allow you to make uh I guess data back decisions, right?
Yeah, and if I can just add to that one little piece is not only organizing and assembling the scorecard, but using the scorecard, how to use it, when to use it, and how to use it to make actionable changes within your practice. It's one thing just to review the data. One thing to put it in the scorecard, review it, and see the trends. Okay, we will walk you through what that means, how to take that item, make it an actionable item, and create this accountability within the whole team. Not so you're not running this dictatorship, right? So that's just my
Mhm.
2 cents on the scorecards. It's not as easy as you think it is, just
Right.
putting together a scorecard, right?
Yeah, I the other one that comes to the surface pretty quickly and dude, this has been one I've been on you and Ryan are probably so sick of me hounding and talking about this. But the visionary integrator model for dentists, this is something that to me is, oh my gosh, this is so, so, so important. And maybe, it's hard to identify which one is the most important, but this is massively important. And there's some of you that are familiar with this, like this concept of visionary integrator, what that is. But the bottom line is, and I'm not going to get, I've done entire 2 hour presentations at summits and webinars and stuff about this, and presented it at other people's summits on this because it's so important. But the bottom line is that every successful company, I don't care what it is, should have two roles filled, and one is the visionary and one is an integrator or implementer or whatever you want to call that position, right? And if all you have is one or the other, you're going to be missing a huge component of what it takes to run a successful business. And so this idea of setting up for dentists specifically, and typically what you have in within a dental office, not always, but typically what you have is that the doc is usually a visionary, just by way of even that they chose the profession of dentistry. That usually aligns that their personality is going to be more toward the visionary type. Not always, but typically. And then usually somebody, whether or not they recognize that they have an integrator, which a lot of docs don't even know if they have an integrator, but they assume that that integrator role or implementer role is their office manager. So the problem is that a lot of times that person isn't qualified. They're not the right person. And they don't even know if they're the right person. They just assume they're like, oh, especially ones that have bought or walked into a practice and they're like, I don't know, he or she was here when I got here and I just keep them going. And the, if you have chaos in your office, if you feel a little chaotic and maybe you don't have clear, understanding of who does what. It starts at that top and it's that visionary integrator dynamic. So we've done, I think, a very, very good job of helping docs identify what their role is. Are you a visionary? Are you an integrator? And do you have the yin to your yang in your office? Are you able to identify that person? And are they empowered to do the things that they need to do? So it's one of the things that we're extremely good at, and so much so that we are even developing that area of EAOS more. So yeah, anyway, I could talk, obviously I could talk about this for 2 hours.
It's so important. It not only is it like empowering, but it's also alleviating. It alleviates. It's for me. I'm a visionary, and I'm a terrible integrator. It's just not who I am. But I was doing some of the integrator jobs because I thought I had to. I thought it was my responsibility as the leader of the practice. And I was drowning. I was like, this is so frustrating and terrible. I hate this. It's not who I am. And so guess what? There's somebody who loves to do that and somebody's really good at it. Find that person, right? And so that's I love that. Yeah, like Dan, like this, we could be on this all day. You have some great insight on this as far as already some webinars and recorded videos and podcasts. So go on to school, Elevation Station School, and look for those, and you can find some more in-depth conversations about that. The third key differentiator between EAOS and EOS we've already talked about too is the interpretation of the data, right? What does your numbers mean? Well, why does your your perio percentage is 6%? What does that mean? What to do about that? How to change that? Make actual changes and fixes on that. So that's a huge component of what we do with practices as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and we've built on top of that, we've built in another differentiator is that we've built in community. There's nothing in EOS about community, nothing at all. It doesn't have any supportive component to any type of camaraderie or community or building some type of tribe as we call it, and I think that that's huge. So we are so big on building peer-to-peer interactions and try to combat isolation. It's one of the things that we actually focus on. And if you guys haven't heard Jared's kind of his journey to where he is now. He talks a lot about that. So I would highly recommend going into he's done podcasts, multiple podcasts he's been a guest on different podcasts to go and hear that story because I think it's something that a lot of docs can relate to. That if you're listening to this, you may be able to relate to it. Where you felt isolation, you felt, like you didn't have a good community. So we with Jared brought that to the table right off the bat, like, hey, we need to have this component. It felt really strongly about it. And for me, it's been like I was just saying a minute ago, it's been something I've been able to enjoy, and really benefit from, you say the best way is to learn from others, journeys or their mistakes or their experiences. And so for me, I'm really grateful that I've never had to have to deal with that because someone caught it before, Jared caught it before I had to go and feel that kind of cruddy situation.
Yeah. I related a lot to Tom Hanks in Castaway. You just feel like you're just like you're making up stuff and doing dumb stuff. We could also say like Lord of the Flies, right? Like when you're out there by yourself, you start making up rules. You really do. You're by yourself, you start making up crap, and your ops manager makes up crap, and all of a sudden you're like, well, this is why we do this, and you haven't talked to anybody about it, and everyone, it's and so anyway, it's it's not good to be alone. It's good
Right.
to talk about it, right? Talk about these things and have this abundant mindset and share and the problem is, it's a big hurdle for dentists to get over. So,
Mhm.
we created this community for that. We love it, or we have an awesome community. Um, it's an important part. And I think that the last key differentiator between us and EOS is that we like to do stuff. And we like to have fun. We like to have adventures. We like to go. We don't like to sit into a classroom in a hotel for a weekend for 8 hours a day, eating Snickers bars as our snacks, right? That's not who we are. We're adventure based. We do a lot of our CE courses while we are in Belize or Nicaragua or Panama, Dominica, whatever it is. We like to do these retreats and these summits, get away from your office, but not just get away, not just go to where did we go to? We went to where did we go? Were we stuck in a hotel all weekend? We went to
Jamaica.
Jamaica. Yeah, thank you, Jamaica. You don't go to places just to sit in a hotel and then when you get out, it's almost dark and you go to the beach for 10 minutes. So that we don't do that, right? We curate these experiences to make them very impactful and very fun. And so that is a huge distinction or differentiator for us from other
There's one more, Jared, and I think that this is huge, is that we are willing to put our money where our mouth is. There's a lot of consultants out there that okay, so in that same Kevin O'Leary podcast that I alluded to earlier in this episode, one of the things he said that, and this cracked me up, was he said that entrepreneurs, I think one of the big separators for an entrepreneur is their willingness to take risks. And he says, and those that have an entrepreneurial mindset but are unwilling to take risks become consultants. And I was like, oh, oh my gosh. And I was like, okay. And then I got thinking about it and I'm like, wow, like when you talk about credibility when it comes to consulting, how many consultants are actually dentists or have been dentists or are actually willing to take the risks? And he said that consultants are really good at telling other people how to take risks without actually taking risks themselves. And I was like, man, that is so I was dying. I was like, oh man, so many shots fired right there. And but it's true. And we have been from the very beginning, we have been willing to put our money where our mouth is. And as you talk about the adventure component of what we do, that was one of the things that we decided that was really important to us is like, hey, if we're going to talk life and talk about improving Doc's life, then we better create some avenues for them to go and have better life. Like not just like, oh, let go plan something, go do something. You should go do something that makes your life better. No, we're like, we're going to go for a freaking week long hike and go hike 22 miles. We're going to go to a surf camp or multiple surf camps, or we're going to go to a diving destination, or we're going to go and do these horseback riding. By the way, real thing happened. One of our members fell off a horse. You know, stuff happens, right? Like, but then you're living life, and we're putting our money where our mouth is, and giving our members or anybody that wants to come attend an opportunity to do these things and really enhance their practice life, their personal life, and find ways to leave a legacy. We don't just say, "Oh, you should go out and do some humanitarian aid work." No, we actually built a humanitarian aid, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, where you can come and experience and live life to its fullest. Come to Tanzania, come see Mount Kilimanjaro yourself, you know, in person, do things. You know, we live so much of life through a lens now. We look at it on a screen, and it's a tragedy. You know, I think our generation is one of the last year that, you know, we actually knocked on our friends' doors when we were kids, you know, went outside. And if, you know, you couldn't just, nobody set up a play date. A play date was like, go find your friends, get out of the house. That's what my mom used to say to me. Get out of the house. You drive me crazy. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, and it just doesn't happen anymore. And more, we're getting forced to live life through a screen. And so we really wanted to build opportunities that are authentic, and that includes all three of those peaks that we've talked about. Yeah, so a lot of differentiators here, and we're very unique in a lot of ways. But it's fun to talk about this stuff, and obviously we're passionate about it. But I think that I think it's probably worth talking a little bit about um, talking about common mistakes. And why we did this is that we know that there's common mistakes if you don't have a system. We know because we didn't have a system for a while, right? Like we get it.
Specifically like EAOS. Without I
Yeah,
would say the mistakes, if you're not using EAOS, you're gonna be making mistakes, right? Some of these common mistakes.
yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I mean, we could rapid fire them off, right? I think that there's, you know, and feel free to jump in anytime you think of any of these, Jared. But chasing production instead of vision. Everybody loves to talk production. Oh, how much is your product? What's product? It's always product. Why is production always the de facto like topic to talk about? It's so strange. It should be vision. What's your vision? What's your vision for your practice? You know, and that's one of the things that jumps out to my head. Do you have a system for hiring and firing and rewarding? Do you have anything within your practice like that? Right?
You're probably reviewing your numbers, but just kinda looking at them. You're probably not really taking any action on what you're doing there on the
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're probably I hit on this actually, you're probably trying to be both a visionary and the integrator. You're probably trying to do everything. And that's not good. That is not a long-term solution that's gonna burn you out really quickly, right? And so, consequently, you end up just building this practice that you're trapped in, right? These are these are things that we've talked about earlier, and just reiterate that without the Elevation Association operating system, you'll probably fall into several of these categories, if not all of them, right?
Yeah. So with that in mind, Jared, who is EAOS for?
Yeah. So for owners who are looking for one grow, if you want to grow your practice, this is a no-brainer. Like this is laying the foundation for practice growth. If you try to grow too quickly without this type of system, you can grow, but you're going to get frustrated and it's going to eventually topple on itself and you're going to be very frustrated with it, right? It's also for dentists like me who I felt really stuck after 10 years into this. I was like, "Oh my goodness, like, I don't know if I'm gonna continue to do this," right? I mean, I was successful, I had money in my bank account, had family, how I had those things, by all means successful, but man, there was no fulfillment. I come home, like, empty, dry, it was crazy, you know? Um, and then, we talked about, like, building, like, scaling. If you're looking to scale your business, grow your business, but without it's gonna be chaos if you don't have this system ahead of time and planned out ahead of time.
I think too that it's for docs who feel isolated,
Yeah.
that are tired of feeling like they're Tom Hanks, in Castaway. I think it's also for docs who are not content with mediocrity.
Mm,
I talked about that, and I love that, that um, there's so many times in life that we settle for mediocrity, and your practice, for those of us that are like, no, that's not good enough for me. Good enough is not good enough. That's for who EAOS is for. Tell you who it's not for is somebody that just wants a freaking quick hack.
mm.
You know, that's what TikTok's for. You know, follow me for more tips and tricks. Oh my gosh, there's just yeah, it's not for that. And I don't think it's for those who are unwilling to lead. And that's okay. If leading is not in your DNA, and there's nothing wrong with that. My wife talks about it all the time. She's like, I don't want anything to do with any of that. She's like, I don't know how you do it. She's like, I just don't love it. She's like, I'm a great soldier. I do not want to be a general. And she says it all, which in my mind, because I love leadership, so I'm like, what? How? What? And I think that it's not fair to put a stigma with that. But if that's not your thing, if you don't want to lead, and that's okay. Like, it's fine. It takes all types, and there's not one that's better or worse than another. I think that we glorify one over the other, and the reality is that there's a lot of us that would be more comfortable in a non-leadership role. But
Yeah.
if you are a leader, then you're definitely going to fit within the Elevation Association.
Yeah. This is not for people who aren't willing to put in the time and effort to make it happen,
Yeah.
who aren't willing to be consistent, who kind of jump from one things to the next and bounce, bounce around, bounce around, bounce around. This probably isn't for you. You really need to be consistent. Greatness isn't people aren't born great. Like I think greatness comes from consistency. It's just like lifting or eating, it's not you don't get strong in 3 weeks or a month, you know? It takes a long time to put on muscle and consistent lifting. This is the same. It's consistency and dependability. That's what this is for. If you really want actionable growth, if you wanna be able to actually step up on stage, it really takes a lot of that consistency. So, you know, I guess is the kind of to wrap it up, we're probably way over time and due, right? Um, to kind of close it all up and bring it home, EOS, Gino Wickman's traction, EOS, it's going to give you a map, which what we loved about it. We used that map initially, right? EAOS, Elevation Association Operations, our adaptation of EOS shows you how to climb to the specific mountains you're looking for, right? Not just a map. Do you know it shows you how these are the components of a map and this how you put it together. We take it a step further. Okay, yes, take these components, use them, but use them for what purpose? Purpose to go here because this is where you want to end up, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not about like building a better practice. It's not just about building a better practice, right? I mean, it is you're building a better practice, but it's about building the life that you end up wanting to live and then using that practice to accomplish that, right? Using that practice to drive that life, to get to that mountaintop that you have defined you want to end up on, not the one you end up on default by using someone else's.
Amen to that, man. Yeah. So if if this story resonates with you, if it's something you're like, holy cow, I've been looking for this, it's pretty cool. We had a couple practice owners reach out to us this last month and say, "Oh, we actually did a search and we looked for dentists who use EOS and we popped up. And so we know you're out there. And if you're not familiar with the EOS, go grab Traction, read it. And then let's chat. Go to elevationassociation.com. You kind of see how it all fits within the community, the fun stuff that we do, the way that we make it interesting and integrate the things that Jared was just talking about. Don't forget to check out the CE portion of the website. That's going to allow you to see like where these cool summits are that we do, in places like Panama, like surf camp I was talking about, or, whether it's snorkeling the reef of Belize or whatever. But check that out. We have a lot of cool options, and also just like straight up leadership. We talked about the EOS stuff, the EOS based leadership components. We actually do a master class where we help you to get that implemented within your practice. So anyway, go to elevationassociation.com. Make sure you check us out on school. We're also on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on, all the social media formats. But yeah, come join us, come start building your EAOS with us. Let's work on your vision, accountability, your scorecard, do all the cool stuff. And you don't need more effort. Work smarter, not harder. You need a better operating system, and we've got one ready made for you. We just need to implement it. So yeah, come talk to us. All right, man. Super fun to talk about this. We can obviously talk about it all day. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. See you later.